the satanification of Hitler didn't come until he had at least receded far enough. The actual Hitler had sort of receded far enough from the imagination so that he could sort of be idealized into someone who could be the Satan in the story and sort of replace Satan. So Hitler would be the instantiation of it.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Adam's Fault. Does every story need a Satan? Every story an instantiation of evil? Does every story need a Pharaoh who's the villain during the time of the Exodus? Does every story need a King Nebuchadnezzar, a King Cyrus, a Julius Caesar, the Romans at the time of Jesus? Hitler would be a more modern example. Stalin would be another example. Paul Vanderklay makes a very interesting comment about how Hitler, in the modern psyche, has replaced Satan as almost the epitome of evil. And Satan has receded, and Hitler has taken his place. But as the boomers die off, and the great generation dies off, the memory of Hitler is beginning to recede. So will Hitler forever be the instantiation of Lucifer or Satan in the modern mind? Well, no, there will be other evil people that will come to the fore and will take his place.
The satanification of Hitler didn't come until he had at least receded far enough. The actual Hitler had sort of receded far enough from the imagination so that he could sort of be idealized into someone who could be the Satan in the story and sort of replace Satan. So Hitler would be the instantiation of it.
And every story needs the evil person, the arch nemesis. And it's no different in the Bible. Of course, we read about Cain and Abel, the serpent in the garden, as I mentioned earlier, the Pharaoh for Moses. And of course, in the New Testament, we have Jesus going to the wilderness after his baptism and being tempted by Satan directly. So this was a direct encounter where Jesus was tempted in various ways, and he did not succumb. Now, in a Latter-day Saint Mormon context, we also have, quote, Joseph Smith's first vision. And in that vision account, Joseph Smith records an encounter with a demonic force. He says, I kneeled down and began to offer up the desires of my heart to God. I had scarcely done so when immediately I was seized upon by some power which entirely overcame me and had such astonishing influence over me as to bind my tongue so that I could not speak. The darkness gathered around me, and it seemed to me for a time as if I was doomed to sudden destruction. But exerting all my powers to call upon God to deliver me out of the power of this enemy which had seized upon me, at the very moment when I was ready to sink into despair and abandon myself to destruction, not to an imaginary ruin, but to the power of some actual being from the unseen world who had such a marvelous power as I had never before felt in any being. So Joseph Smith, in his first vision experience where he encountered God the Father and Jesus, was first confronted by Satan. And it was only after prayer that this force left him and was replaced by the heavenly vision. Interestingly, Joseph Smith also received a revelation about the pre-mortal existence where there was a fight between the dragon and God the Father. This person was Lucifer, the son of the morning, who fought against God and God's plan for the spirits in heaven and for the future of humanity. And so he was cast down to earth, where he is roaming the earth, tempting human souls, including Jesus and Joseph Smith. Now, on a personal level, I've also experienced dark, evil periods. I experienced this when I was on my mission in Norway, but also more directly when I was a teenager after I watched the Zapruder film. If you don't know what the Zapruder film is, it is the film that captures the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And I was struck at that particular time. I don't know particularly why, because I had seen it a few times before, but I was given the strong impression that there was a great darkness and evil surrounding that event. And so I was filled with dread and I left the room and began to go upstairs. And as I went upstairs, I was overcome by this cloud of darkness. This weight pressed upon me and my vision seemed to be murky. And I felt as if I was in despair. Dark thoughts came over me and I thought myself doomed, similar to what Joseph Smith talks about. And so I went further upstairs into my bedroom and prayed with all my heart. This was probably the most fervent prayer I've ever given. And after a few moments, a few minutes, this dark presence left me. And so for me, this has always stuck out to me, even 30 years later. I don't personally need Hitler as an instantiation of evil, as I've directly experienced an evil presence, something that I felt would be my doom. Now, recently, you may have heard of Tucker Carlson, who also described a similar experience where he was actually physically harmed by some demonic entity. So it appears that there are demonic forces. There are people that stand in the place of these demonic forces. And in my most nihilistic periods in my life, these type of experiences are things I could not forget. I could almost convince myself that they were just some sort of psychological experience, but something just nagged at me that there is a reality of evil, and there are people that really embody evil in the world. And that I could not deny, despite my attempts to brush these experiences off as mere psychological phenomenon. Please subscribe and like if you haven't done so already, and I look forward to your comments and suggestions. Until the next video.